We're up to part 5 and still nowhere seeing the end in sight for my coverage of nextfest for February 2025, as we have even more amazing indie games and demos for you to play. We're kicking things off with DeadWire. This is essentially Hotline Miami meets hackers. In it, you will move from room to room shooting enemies, but with the addition of being able to hack anything and anyone that you can see. How this works is when you're in hack mode, you can connect any one thing to any other thing, and then shooting one will impact the other. If you hack two enemies together, you kill one, the other one will die. Hack a car to be triggered by a generator, and the car will drive off and kill anything that gets in its way. Now, the game is trying to be both puzzle and hardcore action, and it's a very curious mix. My main issue that I have with this one is that your ability to hack or connect lines is time limited by the bar you see at the bottom of the screen. So it can be very awkward sometimes trying to do a multi-connect to enemies and objects considering your limited time. But because of the nature of the hacking situation, there's a lot more puzzles to this one, which can lead to you soft locking, which can make things frustrating when you've killed all the enemies, but you didn't open up the door right, so now you have to restart the whole level. I like the style of this one, and I think with a little bit more fine-tuning in terms of the different hacking elements and just the flow of the game, this could be a phenomenal and very different take on the kind of top-down shooter formula. So if you're in the mood for some hotline hacking, then definitely give this one a play. We go to a different kind of tactical thinking with Gnomes. This is a kind of turn-based tower defense. In it, each day, you need to spend gold in order to acquire artifacts and housing to supply your gnomes. The gnomes themselves are your towers. Each one can level up based on how much they kill or do damage to the enemy. You're given exact information as to where the enemies are coming from, what their pathing is, and their stats for health and other behaviors. And it's up to you to figure out what is the best defense to mount given your resources. Each day that goes by, you'll be able to buy more things from the shop, and the challenge in this one is balancing long-term growth and your economy with making sure you have enough gnomes and other devices needed to stop the enemies from advancing. At the end of all the waves, you'll fight, of course, a giant boss. And I like the variety of strategies and playstyles in this one, and the GUI is phenomenal in giving you as much and as readily available information as to how to mount your defense. This one I would say can still be a bit on the challenging side, but there is certainly a lot here for fans of tower defense and turn-based strategy. So another very easy recommendation, one that I definitely want to play more of when it is released. And now we turn to Nitro Gen Omega, which feels like we combine Megazords with MechWarrior. It is the far future, and the world is being taken over by robots, so it's up to you and your plucky crew of anime protagonists to pilot a giant mech in order to earn money and maybe save the world at the same time. There is a lot going on in this game, as each kind of role in your mech has different abilities, and who you put in them will influence things further. You can equip different gear, which acts as what other abilities your mech can get. During combat, you'll need to decide where and what your mech will do based on the different kind of commands in the timeline at the bottom. And there is a lot to this one. To be honest, I didn't quite understand a lot of it. The onboarding from the demo is unfortunately just not good. We also ran into some kind of fuzziness with some of the backgrounds and general environments, which made it a little bit hard on the eyes. I love the aesthetics and theme of this one, and if they can improve on the general playability, this could be a phenomenal game to check out. But at the moment, it's definitely going to be a little rough trying to learn it, but I'm hoping that they can get it all going for when it is released. And now we switch to something a little bit more traditional with Beyond the Ice Palace 2. This is an action-adventure game where you play a king who has risen from the dead in order to take revenge on everyone who has imprisoned and killed him. As you can tell by the footage, this game looks very familiar to a certain franchise, complete with the ability to whip and grapple all around. Now, while the story page says that this is a Metroidvania, we really didn't see too much of those elements here. Instead, we got a very impressive action-adventure. In this one, you'll be able to attack using your different whips. You'll have kind of your special meter that's used for dodging, parrying, or kind of like doing like a counter move and your heavy charge. And you're exploring the world for treasures and items that you can use to upgrade your character. You even have the ability to destroy projectiles using your kind of like spin whip action. And the game seems to boast a variety of different boss fights as well. As I said, while the game is in the Metroidvania category, I didn't see anything in terms of like major upgrades, new movement tech, etc, etc. But even without those elements, this is a very solid and impressive looking action-adventure game. We played through the entire demo, getting some really nice variety of bosses and enemy designs. If you are a fan of action-adventure, especially the 2D variety, this is a very easy recommendation, and I definitely want to swing my way through this one when it is released. We now go to Blightstone, which is kind of a tactical strategy meets Darkest Dungeon. It's up to you and your party and a magic crystal to brave across the land to stop the Demon Lord from taking over. Each party member belongs to a specific class, and these classes determine which gear they can equip and what skills and upgrades they'll get access to. Combat is handled turn-based, as you'll decide who to attack and in what order. Characters' healths are persistent across fights, and if your crystal runs out of health, it is game over. At night, you'll be able to use different campfire abilities to boost or aid your character members, and there are quests that can add new modifiers, new gear, etc, etc. Now, the main force of this game is going to be meta progression, as you will unlock different permanent upgrades, different new classes, items that can appear, and that kind of thing. I like the tactical layer in this one, but it did feel a little bit awkward in terms of being able to stop enemies. Like, I send like Giant Bruiser out to grab an enemy who has increased threat, and yet the enemy breaks the guard, walks right around him, and hits my weakest guy, killing them in a single hit. So there may need to be something a little bit more done to allow for advanced tactics in the main game, but this one looks like it could be a very solid kind of strategy or tactical RPG when it is released. And now we switch to Geargrit, which is basically an homage to every single PlayStation 2 era of 3D platforming. You are going to run, jump, spin, dash, smack, and other moves in order to explore a world, fight off baddies, and of course collect MacGuffins of all kinds. The game itself definitely has a lot of those elements in place, as you'll need to get good at both punching, kicking, jumping, and dodging, and of course being able to get around the world and not fall into death traps here and there. I like the look of this one a lot, and once you learn kind of the mechanics and methodology for fighting, it does open up quite a bit in terms of movement and fight tech. Now, the jumping and jump movement does feel a little bit janky in spots. See, the big thing is that your character doesn't behave instantly when it comes to moving and jumping in the air. They do borrow momentum and velocity, which means that it's not as precise in terms of making actions compared to some of those older games. This can get into trouble when you're trying to perform certain actions in like very tight environments or when there's very limited maneuvering room in order to get around. I do like what I'm seeing here in terms of everything, and if they can kind of make things a little bit, I would say, fairer or tighter in terms of the movement and jump tech, this could be a phenomenal throwback to the era of kind of, again, the PlayStation 2 3D platformer style. So, if you like your platforming with a bit of action or your action with a bit of platforming, then give this one a play. And for the last game of our showcase, this is Scarlet, City of Devils, a hot hellish and horny Metroidvania. You play Scarlet, who's trying to kind of run around a city in hell to perhaps take it over or some other mysterious goal. And to do that, they're going to have to do a whole lot of hacking and slashing across the town. Now, the game does feature some very revealing characters, but still kept, I would say, like PG-13, for those of you who are worried about that. But this is a combat-centric Metroidvania with a heavy emphasis on that combat. To wit, by perfect dodging into an enemy just as their attack collides with your hitbox, you gain bullet time, enabling you to do massive damage over a few seconds. And this is very important because the timing window is very precise. I think it's like to the frame in order to pull this off. By killing enemies, you'll earn money, which will allow you to buy different upgrades, enhance kind of your healing potion, etc, etc. Now, the combat, despite its focus, is a little bit on the floaty side. You see, the problem is that when you hit an enemy, you kind of push them ever so slightly. So, as you're hitting them, you can have a situation where you're in the middle of your combo and you push them out of your attack range, thereby turning off the hit stun, and then the enemy can just smack you. And during boss fights, it can be very hard to keep an attack on the enemy because they will attack multiple times and they do not have any hit stun whatsoever. So we also ran into this issue where the enemy would start an attack, I would dodge out of the way, and the enemy would still track even though they're already in the kind of wind-up animation from when I was facing the other way. So they just immediately turn and smack me. And there really wasn't anything I could do to get around that due to how fast your dodge is. With a little bit more refinement to the combat, this could be a very solid combat-focused Metroidvania. So if you don't mind a little bit of horniness to go with your double jumping, I would give this one a try. And with that, we are done with another showcase. There are still plenty more demos to get to. Let me know what you think about these down below, and I'll see everyone for our next part. Thanks for watching, and a special thank you to our Patreon supporters. If you enjoyed the video, do the YouTubing stuff, be sure to visit our Discord and Patreon, and if you're interested in more in my thoughts on design, check out my game design books.